I want to start this presentation on lifting with a painting that I've done. I airbrushed in most of this, and I airbrushed in all this too. Now what you see here is I went through and airbrushed the background and washed in a lot of this down here. And then I went back in and I lifted out all these clouds. And I used a toothbrush and paper towels. And after I lifted it out, and while it was still wet, I went back in and floated some of this crimson in there that you see. And then this is what you can do with lifting. Now down. Okay, when we lift, we have to understand a couple of principles and things that we need to think about. If you have painted with a staining pigment, the probabilities of lifting that color out are extremely low. You're probably going to damage your paper before you get the color lifted out. This is a synthetic brush, and it's good for putting stuff on there, and you'll see that when I lift. Now when you lift on wet paper, and you're lifting something out wet, you're not going to see a significant change. You're going to see a lightening of the pigment, but like I said earlier, as soon as I lift it out and the paper's still wet, the pigments and the colors are going to flow back into that area to a certain degree, and you're not going to have any sharp edges, or you're not going to lose any edges because there's not any there at all. You know, I know it's a long ways from this to what I previously shown you, but we have to understand the very basics of what we're doing before we can proceed. Now what I'm going to do here, this is the staining pigment that we used earlier, and you can see the little dots and stuff where I put the masking fluid. And this is where the frisket was at, and this is where the painter's tape was at. So we're going to start trying to lift out some of this stuff. So the first thing I'm going to use, now remember, this is machine-made paper. It's not very durable, and there's a high probability that will affect the paper surface in an undesirable manner. But nonetheless, I want to demonstrate exactly how this works. In this case, it doesn't work. I don't believe we'll get much paint out of this. Now the first thing I've taken is a toothbrush. I've wet it down. And I'm going to try and lose these edges here, basically lighten the edges up a little bit. Now you can see some of it coming out, but the edges are still very, very sharp. And of course we have to go back in. Anytime we're lifting, we got to get the moisture off there. And look, it's damaging the paper already. This is very poor paper for doing anything with. Okay, and I can tell you now, I wouldn't proceed any further trying to lift stuff out. Let's look at this frisket here, and I'm not pressing hard on it, and it's just the nature of the paper. So you have to pick a paper that's pretty durable. I'm going to use a different brush here. I'm going to use a very soft one that I've cut down to help me, get finer lines when I try and lift. So I'll go in here and I'll try and lift something out here. And you can see it lifting a little bit. But if I press hard enough, look, the paper's still coming off. So, even I can't make this into a cloud. There's really very little I can do with this. Once you paint in a staining color, it's pretty much going to be there. I can't lose these edges very well. So the lesson here, look, that paper's so bad. You're picking the paper up. Now this will happen with the very best paper you can buy. If you use these scrubbers, this is going to happen. It will not happen, and I may show you later, further down the line, with these nice soft brushes. This will not happen with something that has sufficient sizing on it, and it's a durable paper. Okay, I'm not going to go any further with this. This is a waste of time to try and. The only purpose here is to show you that you're not going to lift a staining color very easily. And the other lesson is get good paper. Okay, now this is the ultramarine light, and supposed to be, it's an easy lift. It's not a staining pigment. So I'm going to go in here and very gently, like I did earlier, with the toothbrush, a damp toothbrush, and try and lose some of these edges, lift out some of the hardness of the edges. And you notice how easy it lifts out. Look, it's starting to lift out, and you can see the edge. And of course, as I said earlier, we're dealing with a very cheap paper here, and it doesn't take much in the line of wetting. But you can see the difference from the previous exercise in trying to lift the paint out. You can see how easy it lifts out. That's the difference between staining and non-staining. I'll go back in with the small brush here and see how, if I can lift out a relatively sharp line. And I'll need to wet it some more. And really this is what, and as you can see, and you need your paper towel. And look, it's sort of irritating to see that paper lift off there. But as you can see the difference. So it's important that you understand your pigment before you get started. Now remember, when I put the frisket, I said we could deal with these edges. We can go back in here and lift out a lot of the stuff that ran underneath it, and get a reasonable idea. Now, when I made those clouds on a previous picture of the ship, I used a toothbrush primarily. Matter of fact, this same toothbrush, and did a lot of scrubbing, and of course it did not affect that paper, because it was a cold press and it was a mold-made paper. Notice how this lifts off here. I'm gonna go ahead and do this and show you something. You get the same effect on the cold press, good paper, without all the paper coming off the surface. Okay, now and of course, obviously, you do not want to use this thing here. I mean, this will tear your paper up in a heartbeat. And I don't really care what kind of paper it is, but you can see it starting to come off. And really, I'm not pressing very hard because this is an easy lift pigment. But look at all the paper that comes off there. And for two reasons. One, this is very, very rough. I try not to abuse my paper. They say abuse. I try not to damage my paper. I don't. I used to pick out bits with a razor blade and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore. I really don't find it necessary. But anyway, this is what can occur. And with practice, the clouds that I showed you earlier, and most clouds, if you go in with a pigment that's not staining, you can lift out the edges and you can get the feathery look, and then you can float a color in there, a darker or red or whatever color you want in there on the underside of the clouds or throughout the clouds, and it works pretty well. Yeah, the next presentation I think I'll do is we'll start talking about pigments.